Hello students, I wanted to take some time and walk you through visually the Geometer Sketchpad lesson plan and video that you will create for this class. This includes not only a written lesson plan, but a video which you'll upload to YouTube, because I think it not only then gives you an opportunity to show how technology can be powerfully used in a math class to help students develop conceptual understanding and procedural fluency, but then you also have the awesome opportunity to share it with other practitioners in the field. And how many of us go to YouTube routinely to find instructional videos to help us understand a concept or to utilize perhaps in a lesson to make it more engaging? I'm sure quite frequently. So that's why we're going to be sharing what we create so that we continue to add to best practices and the resources that are available so that other practitioners might utilize them. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to pull up the Word document that you have been given that shows your PDF rather, that shows you the various elements that need to be included in your Sketchpad lesson and video, and the rubric that will be used to assess it. So there are three main parts to this, which you saw in the Blackboard shell. There is the completed lesson plan. There is the recorded interactive geometer sketchpad activity that's based upon a specific standard, which you will specify in that completed lesson plan. And once you have recorded how you will utilize the software in real time, you'll upload it to YouTube, but you also will include a written research reflection, just one page, double spaced, about how you utilize specific instructional strategies and technology within your lesson to support student understanding. And we want you to incorporate research because it's so important that our instructional choices be based upon best practices in the field, established best practices. Again, this is only one page, but I do require you to insert any scholarly sources that you utilize in APA format. So you will use in-text citation, and you'll have a separate reference page where you will include the scholarly article or articles that you have employed, and you will write them in APA format. I would encourage you to visit the Purdue OWL site if you need a refresher on proper APA format. Now, this lesson plan that you will write, which is an important part of the entire project, follows a specific template. You use what we call the ED TPA lesson plan template, which I am certain you have seen before in other classes if you're an upperclassman. However, if you are a freshman, maybe even a sophomore, you may not have seen the ED TPA lesson plan. It's very thorough. It's fantastic, but it might be a little more thorough than other lesson plans you may have seen, and it has many specified pieces. We try to integrate this throughout the coursework at Franciscan because you utilize this lesson plan template during student teaching when you're creating your ED TPA portfolio, which is then nationally scored and assessed through Pearson. So it gives you some great exposure and practice filling it out. I'm going to record a separate video where I walk you through the lesson plan, particularly because I know for some of you this lesson plan template might be new, and I can give you a little bit more information about each aspect. I will also pass out in class an exemplary lesson plan for teaching secondary mathematics that was completed by a prior student about a certain topic so that you just have a real example to utilize and look at as you are completing your own. What I would like to do right now is look at the rubric that's going to be used to assess the lesson plan, the video, and the research reflection, and that's what follows. So under scoring, you are told that your technology-supported lesson, video, and short research reflection will be graded both for timeliness and quality. You can earn up to 20 points simply for turning in all three parts on time. So that's great. So make sure you do. The other 39 points are earned based on the quality of each piece that you submit. And the rubric that is utilized to assess the quality of each piece is right here. This rubric is aligned to 4 NCTM standards, which we try to base all of our mathematics education coursework upon so that we are teaching you according to current best practices. But standard 2 deals with mathematical practices, and you're going to see that there are several different pieces of the mathematical practices that you're going to include in your lesson and video that you are going to be assessed by. And so I'm going to walk through each of the required pieces for standard 2 right here. And I'm going to pull this down just a bit. Okay, so 2B1. It states, in the lesson plan and the video, the candidate demonstrates his or her ability to reason abstractly, reflectively, and quantitatively with attention to units, constructing viable arguments and proofs. The language that you're using, both within your lesson plan and in your video, is very important. I'll be looking to make sure that you're showing appropriate abstract reasoning, that you're reflecting upon what you're saying, and that any of the arguments, statements that you make, that they are viable and true. Within the lesson plan and video, this is 2B.2, I want to make sure that you demonstrate your ability to represent and model generalizations using mathematics while providing opportunities for students to recognize patterns of mathematical thinking. So most of the time in mathematics, we use examples, but we use those to help students then come up with what are general properties so they understand where they come from or how they're displayed or how they can be applied. So I want to see you doing something of that nature within your lesson plan and video. 2B3 says within the lesson plan and video, the candidate communicates mathematical ideas using a variety of representations and recognizes and clarifies the connections between the representations. So anytime you're using variables or different mathematical notation, you want to connect that to maybe the property or vocabulary or variable that it represents. So you want it to be as clear as possible. 2B4 and 2D, it says in the lesson plan and video, the candidate employs appropriate vocabulary and symbols to communicate mathematical ideas to others and clearly communicates to students that they are expected to communicate their reasoning precisely. You see a lot of emphasis on communication. Many students dislike or even detest mathematics because they don't understand the academic vocabulary, and that's either because it's not properly defined or connected with everyday experiences for students, it's not unpacked in words that are understandable, or it's just because there's not an emphasis made on both the teacher communicating and then giving the students opportunities to practice communicating. That allows them to own the language. So I want to be seeing both those taking place in your lesson plan and in your video. 2F. The candidate's video clearly demonstrates his or her ability to link mathematical understanding with four or more of the following mathematical practices: problem solving, reasoning, communicating, connecting, and representing. You're naturally going to represent. Math is full of representation with symbols and letters. You're going to make connections by telling us, the audience, or the students, or giving them an opportunity to make connections between what those symbols represent in a real world setting or according to a problem. You're going to naturally communicate. So these things will naturally occur in the video, but it's just being intentional about them and doing them well that I'm going to be looking for. That's everything for 2. Now, if you're new to the standard rubrics that we set up in education, you might be wondering, where is she getting this 2B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2D? This standard up here is broken down into what we call elements, and they're elements A, B, C, D, E, F, or how many ever the Specialized Professional Association, which ours is the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, how many elements it sets up. So I'm basically assessing you based on certain elements so that I can pay attention to more specific things instead of assessing you fully on one standard. That just helps you to practice and to hone in on each of those different elements, and it's not so wide sweeping then. It's just one piece at a time that you are assessed according to. Okay, but that's standard 2. Standard 3 and 6 are together because some of these elements in 3 overlap with those in 6, and so I put them together. Standard 3 deals with content pedagogy. So the pedagogies are your teaching techniques, and then Standard 6 deals with professional knowledge and skills. So for 3A, element 3A, what I'll be looking for is that your instruction in the lesson plan and video is designed to engage students in developmentally appropriate practices and investigations, and that you clearly communicate the student learning outcomes based on Common Core standards. This should naturally occur as long as you have chosen a Common Core state standard to base your lesson on. You've articulated that as well as the student learning outcomes in your lesson plan. And then you're also going to have those typed out on a page in your geometer sketchpad lesson as well. That way it's fully evident. This should be an easy one to earn all 3 points on. 2B and 6C, it says the candidate develops a one-page double-spaced research reflection which identifies how the research was used to design the lesson plan and how this research corresponds to students' developmental needs. Again, we want to give our students the best, and we do that by making sure that our instruction aligns with current research regarding the best and most effective practices. So that's why I want you to dive into that and make sure that your instructional choices do align with that. For 3C, it says the candidate creates a lesson plan that appropriately incorporates Geometer's Sketchpad to effectively build all students' conceptual understanding and procedural fluency, and that you include accommodations for the needs of diverse learners. You will do that specifically in your lesson plan where it has the section about accommodating for diverse needs. So this should be an easy one to gain a 3 on as well. For 3D, it says the candidate creates a lesson plan that provides students with several opportunities to communicate about mathematics and make meaningful connections among mathematics, other content areas, everyday life, and or the workplace. When you are recording your video about your lesson, you want to talk about where you would intentionally ask for students to give feedback, to answer questions, to articulate what they're thinking so that they can make those meaningful connections themselves. In your lesson plan, there's going to be a section where it talks about assessments that you will utilize. You want to have both formative and summative assessments that are aligned to your learning outcomes, and you want to use a variety of strategies within those assessments so that you can accommodate varying levels of thinking and difficulty. Okay, for standard 4, and you notice I incorporated a little bit of 6 again here because there was some overlap in the elements. Standard 4 deals with mathematical learning environment. And what I'll be looking for is that your lesson plan is sequenced to create challenging research supporting learning opportunities that are developmentally appropriate. The research-based article that, or excuse me, the research-based reflection that you use, where you justify whatever instructional techniques you're going to use, those instructional techniques need to actually be present in the lesson plan and then within your video too. So I'm going to look for streamlining there. If that's the case, if they're based on best practices and they're fitting for the Common Core state standard and the grade level you're teaching, then you're going to earn a 3 on this. For 4B2, your lesson and video need to actively engage students in building new knowledge from prior knowledge and experiences. The lesson plan should talk about what you do before you start your lesson. That's where you do a hook and you grab students' attention, or you link what you're going to be teaching to prior learning in an engaging way. We have to show that scaffolding, and I want to see that in the lesson plan and the video. Lastly, for 4E, your video should demonstrate that Sketchpad is used in a dynamic, engaging way that enhances teaching and active student learning. How am I going to be looking for that? Through the use of multiple pages and buttons. Multiple pages show that you're organizing and sequencing the learning appropriately. The buttons are going to make it engaging and hands-on. I also want to see on those pages, and I say you need at least 3, the learning outcomes, academic language, and standards on page 1, because that gives a very thorough introduction to your lesson for any practitioners that are then viewing that video. Now, this particular element may not make much sense to you right now because you may not know how to create multiple pages or buttons yet in Sketchpad. That's okay. There's several different examples of lessons that have done so that I'm going to show you in the next video. And in addition, I give you several different resources to consult for extra help with Sketchpad. I'm going to show you those in the next